Thursday, January 26. Special projects, Big Jar Giving. Research has shown that only about 9% of people's assets are liquid and could be contributed as an offering on a moment's notice. Cash, checking accounts, saving accounts, money market funds and so on are generally considered liquid assets, at least for those possessing things like this. Most of our assets, about 91%, are invested in real estate, such as our homes, our livestock if we are rural, or other non-liquid items. The differences in the percentage of liquid and non-liquid assets can be illustrated by putting 1,000 pennies in two different glass jars, with 10 pennies representing each percentage point. So you would have 90 pennies in a small jar representing the 9% liquid assets and 910 pennies in a large quart or 2-litre size jar representing the 91% of non-liquid assets. Most people give their offerings or contributions from the small jar, from their liquid assets. That is, what they have in their checking account or their pocketbook or wallet. But when someone really gets excited about something, they give from the big jar. The Bible tells many such stories. Read Mark 14, verses 3 to 9, and John 12, verses 2 to 8. Who were the main characters at Simon's feast? What was the value of Mary's gift? Why did she anoint Jesus at this time? Mark 14, beginning at verse 3, and being in Bethany at the house of Simon the leper, as he sat at the table, a woman came having an alabaster flask of very costly oil or spikenard. Then she broke the flask and poured it on his head. But there were some who were indignant among themselves and said, Why was this fragrant oil wasted? For it might have been sold for more than 300 denarii and given to the poor. And they criticized her sharply. But Jesus said, Let her alone. Why do you trouble her? She has done a good work for me. For you have the poor with you always, and whenever you wish, you may do them good. But me you do not have always. She has done what she could. She has come beforehand to anoint my body for burial. Assuredly I say to you, wherever this gospel is preached in the whole world, what this woman has done will also be told as a memorial to her. And John 12, beginning at verse 2. There they made him a supper, and Martha served, but Lazarus was one of those who sat at the table with him. Then Mary took a pound of very costly oil of spikenard, anointed the feet of Jesus, and wiped his feet with her hair, and the house was filled with the fragrance of the oil. But one of the disciples, Judas Iscariot, Simon's son, who would betray him, said, Why was this fragrant oil not sold for 300 denarii and given to the poor? This he said, not that he cared for the poor, but because he was a thief and had the money box, and he used to take what was put in it. But Jesus said, Let her alone. She has kept this for the day of my burial. For the poor you have with you always, but me you do not have always. Mary's gift was worth 300 denarii, a full year's wages. It was most likely a big jar gift. Following this incident, Judas betrayed Jesus for a little more than 1/3 of that amount. A little jar gift, 30 pieces of silver, as we read in Matthew 26, verse 15, and said, What are you willing to give me if I deliver him to you? And they counted out to him 30 pieces of silver. It takes real love and commitment to make big jar gifts from our investments. But when we get greedy, like Judas, we can sell our souls for next to nothing. The work and activities of Barnabas are mentioned 28 times in the New Testament. We know him primarily as a companion to the Apostle Paul and as a great missionary. But the foundation for all of this is established in the first passage where he is mentioned. In Acts 4:36 and 37, we read of his giving truly a big jar offering. And let's read those words. And Joseph, who was also named Barnabas by the apostles, which is translated son of encouragement, a Levite of the country of Cyprus, having land, sold it, and brought the money and laid it at the apostles' feet. What a powerful example of Christ's words, for where your treasure is, there your heart will be also, in Matthew 6, verse 21. And so to finish today, why is sacrificial giving as important for the givers as for the recipients? This lesson was read by Dr. Percy Harrold for Christian Services for the Blind. Sponsored by the Sabbath School Department and distributed through Hope Channel Australia, this podcast is also redistributed by Hope Channel Germany, Christian Record Services for the Blind. It is also available on SoundCloud and through multiple podcast distributors, including Apple iTunes. And you can listen and watch at the same time on YouTube. Remember, God is always faithful. And here is a disclaimer. Contents of these lessons are not intended to be financial advice, but is general commentary based on biblical principles. The reader is encouraged to seek competent professional advice which will suit their particular personal situation.